Welcome to regular meeting of the Advisory Commission of Coastal Waters. It's Monday, July 15th, 2024 at 7:30 p.m. We're meeting in DARIEN Town Hall, room 119. And in attendance is Kevin Marks, Bill Wright, Martin Masterson, myself, Julie Jones, Phil Crawford, David Kahn, yes, and Officer Dan Ehre.
Ehre, yep.
Ehre,
yep.
Missing today is Sam Bridges, Bill Cavers, Dave Deaver, Rob Roberto, and Grant Tancus, and also our ex officio members Lori Bora, John Keenan. So I'm going to call the meeting to order, and since we'll have Officer Dan kick off our meeting today and give us an update on what's going on in our waters.
Sure. Well, we had a very successful, even though it wasn't hosted by Darien, we worked very closely with the surrounding towns. So last week we did all the fireworks from July 2nd through up to the 7th, I think it was. We had 4 16-hour days from Westport to Greenwich, Stamford, Wheaton Beach, or Norwalk, Catbasher, and Bailey Beach in Wheaton. No significant incidents, which was a nice change, to be honest. But as far as our waters in Darien, it's been crowded. Really no significant issues as either. But we're not really seeing anything out of the ordinary. People in general, I think, have become much better as far as education. With the skiing and the towing, and that's what we try to enforce on people, especially beginning of the season. Like I said, I've been down there for a while, and we know the families. I've known John Keenan for years, and I've seen you many times. So there's really no issues, so to speak. I'm sure you guys have issues, questions. I'm happy to answer them if I can. If I was to bring anything up, and I don't know where it stands here, but at low tide, going out of the harbor, even near the yacht club, I've seen 5 feet. It's getting pretty shallow. I don't know if there's plans to dredge at some point. That's definitely something that we're not going to make it another 10 years, I'd say.
Have you seen groundings? Is that, I just want to make sure.
No, just we have the depth finder.
Okay.
And if it's a moon tide, depending on what it is and whatnot, I mean, it can get pretty low at the exact dead low tide. That's been over years of washing sandy and washing in and silting in and whatnot. The other thing going on, I actually
just on that point, just so to bring you up to date, we are collectively working through the laborious process of starting to get funding for that and get an application in front of DEEP. So that process has started, but it's a multi-year process.
I know Stanford just went through it. They did West Beach, and it's a world of improvement down there. I mean, they had a ramp. The ramp and the docks near the ice rink over there were almost inaccessible. But we're not there yet, but it's getting pretty shallow, I'd say. The Blue Flame, I know we were talking about before, that and what replaced it is definitely tidal conditions going in and out. Otherwise, there'd be an issue.
What is the Blue Flame?
It was it was a 52-foot sailboat, a private boat.
It's prior to Love Machine.
Prior to Love Machine, yeah. But even the Love Machine, that boat the new one went out. I'm not sure if it was dragging or not, but you have to pay attention to the tide if you're going to take a boat like that out, or coming in. If you have any guests coming in, you can easily have a boat come in, looking around, coming from Long Island, and they don't know the tide or the current, because the current really cruises through there. And if we throw it at the wrong tide, it could be a problem. Here he is.
Welcome, John.
How are you?
John?
Come on in.
How are you?
Just pull a chair.
Or over here.
Note for Channel 79 that our First Lieutenant John Zagreski is joining us this evening. Welcome, John.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
So that's really it on that, just a bigger issue. The harbor is really susceptible when we have those heavy rains. We dealt with it a couple years ago. I almost wanted to I think I've been with the 5 Mile River Commission at the time, but we had a real problem after one of those storms with large logs that were coming into the harbor. Myself and my old partner, Jimmy Martin, we spent 2 days just picking them up as best we could with the workboat, just because that'll take off a transom, somebody get hurt, somebody get thrown over or whatever. And it was almost to the point where, I mean, it's very few and far between, hopefully, those storms, almost to the point where we thought of maybe an ordinance or something of not stacking wood within X amount of feet of the river, the harbor, channel, whatever you want to call it. Because when it swells, it picks up everything around it, and it just comes crashing down the river into the harbor.
Was it 5 Mile River or the?
Both, but Goodwives was really bad, into the Darien Boat Club, and then out. I mean, full trees, full, people who stack chopped wood next to on the bank of the river or bank of the channel just got swept away, and we were picking up all kinds of stuff. Not that you can really control that, but I mean, it's something to get the word out to people when we have those rains. And the only other thing is, this, I'm sure John Keena spoke on, I talk to him quite often, I see him quite often. This past winter, the lighthouse, the buoys out near the lighthouse, anybody have any questions about that?
Yeah, if you would, actually, just for people who may be watching on television, if you could just describe what that is.
So we were completely caught off guard, which I was not happy about. I guess it happened over the winter. Again, we have a very fantastic relationship with the surrounding departments, but we had no knowledge of it. John had no knowledge of it. I don't think Simon had any knowledge of it. And we went out there one day, it was probably early March or mid-March, and we come around the point, and there's 3 massive round buoys. They're steel and surrounded by a large field, probably 2 football fields, if not bigger, of yellow lit buoys. It's just southwest of the lighthouse. If you're looking at a chart, looking down on it, and those are the 3 moorings for the large barges for material and construction equipment up the river for the bridge job in Norwalk. So of course I called over and we talked to our counterparts and whatnot, and they assured me it's in Norwalk waters. And then it brought up the whole idea of where exactly is the line up there in Norwalk, which we've been diving into. I have this chart. This is not fully accurate, but this is what we can go off of. And basically this is going to be going for the next 6 or 7 years. That's going to be there.
Where did the chart come from?
So there's I talked to Norwalk Harbor Master and the Norwalk Marine Police, and I said, this is our issue. They assured me it's in Norwalk waters. And I said, okay, can we look at the chart just so I have it, because I know we're going to be asked about it. They said, no problem. They went back to the city, and they came back a few weeks later. Deep, the state, and Norwalk all came back with a chart that were all different.
Yes, never aware of that.
It never happens in government.
But as a general rule, I'm out there every day now. So in case, just so everybody's clear, if we're going south on 5 Mile River Road, 5 Mile River, south of 5 Mile River, off our side is Darien, down the middle, off the port side would be Norwalk. As you exit the harbor, the river, the green buoy that's there, it takes about a 12-degree jog to the west, and that as it opens up the mouth like this, where the buoy, where that field is actually pretty far from Green's Ledge. So a lot of people think Green's Ledge is like right on the line. It's not. It's probably, I don't want to say a quarter mile, but it's a good distance. So that's
East of the
correct.
Norwalk
So that field of buoys is in Norwalk waters.
Is that, I did not know it's not tensed.
Yeah.
I saw that recently as well. But isn't it like a notice to mariners? I thought there's a role of Coast Guard.
And that's the other thing. Then we went down that road. This is all federal railroad, Coast Guard approved, big time permits.
So I would find that notice to mariners.
Yeah.
I'm curious.
The reason I asked the source is because we're revising the ordinances that, and the definition of town waters requires a map.
And that's what I have here. I don't know how familiar you guys are with it.
Yeah.
So we're unique in the sense that, not unique, but, so Greenwich, Stanford, and Darien, our waters extend to the Mid-Sound.
Yeah.
As you can see on the line there. All the other towns, they're actually quite shallow, the waters. these waters here would be state proper. Granted, if there was something to happen, it's not gonna be the state, it's gonna be Westport going out, Fairfield going out and whatnot. But our waters go all the way out to just past, I think it's 28C, the Green Nun out there, just mid-sound. It doesn't really apply for really anything unless something really happens.
28C is here.
Right, it'd be out here. Well, I'm saying a line there.
Oh, did you? Oh,
Yeah, the red buoy, that red mark is roughly where the lighthouse is, and you can see how it jogs to the west. So that's kind of what I had here. But I'm still, so the point of this, with all this discussion, I'm still waiting on the proper, one of the good things that's coming from this project is we got some really good charts somewhere that hopefully I can get our hands on.
But this is an interesting thing that ties into some of the other things that we're running into in connection with the ordinances, which is, it may be that we should, as a town, have a maritime lawyer who actually knows what he or she is doing, help the town on this, because this is a specialized area,
Absolutely.
including a lot of historical things like this that, you know, somebody's handwritten map.
Yes.
And rather than put it on the onus on you to figure it out with the other towns, we should have somebody who specializes in this.
Maritime law is very convoluted. It goes back to old New England, and there's all kinds of quirky things. I'm not versed in it at all. I know that if a boat washes up during Sandy and it's not claimed for X amount of time, someone can take it, and that has happened.
If the definition of town waters versus state and the shellfishing part has always been point to point.
Yeah,
Right.
with that, yes, that's different though.
Right.
Can I just tease out the point, though, the intention of these buoys is to be temporary and limited to the,
Yeah, so going back to that, so we didn't know about it, which was unfortunate. I wish we had some foresight. Not that we would have changed anything or done anything, but a little bit more notice. The buoys are out there. From what I understand, it's a 6 to 7 year time frame. That's where they tie up the material that will be shipped, that will be brought in for the bridge that's being done up the river, for the railroad bridge. And I've been in touch with both the harbor master, and I know John's been relentless talking to the harbor master, trying to get some more direction on it. But it wouldn't have changed anything. These are federal permits, but it's something that we should have known about to you know, when we talked to people at the boat club and kind of put some warnings out and whatnot.
As we sit here today, there's only 2 of the big white barge warnings that are visible.
The first couple weeks, the third one, or one of the 3, I think it's the one in the middle, absorbed water and went down below the surface, and a boat went right over it and ripped off its lower unit. That's normal. So
And it's now sitting on the bottom of that mooring.
yeah, it's down.
as it should.
This past weekend, I found twice the surrounding yellow buoys that are lit up at night. Those had blown. Someone probably dragged it. I think they dragged it coming in because it's right in your approach. If you're coming in around the lighthouse, it's on the approach. I went out there during the day, and it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon. There's yellow buoys sitting off of between Fish Island and Zippers Cove.
Are they tethered to the?
They have a Danforth anchor on the bottom with heavy chain, and then probably about 10 feet of smaller chain. So it's not something you can really handle by hand, but the chain had been ripped off because I think somebody dragged it. So I spent the next hour on the phone trying to contact the company that put them out there and whatnot, and the Marine Police, and I said, I just can't have it in our waters, liability-wise. So I just basically brought it back over, put it where it was, and secured it over there, and let them know about it.
Is it your understanding that the intention of the lit buoys is to alert them to the
Correct.
permit point?
Correct.
They're actually all lit. There's
Yeah.
15 lit.
Right.
When they're all floating, there's 15 lit buoys out
Yeah,
there.
there's the 3 big ball, 1, 2, 3 are all lined up, and it's surrounded by a huge rectangle of the yellow lit buoys. And I've had several follow-up conversations, including our chief actually was on the phone with somebody they need to go out there and inspect what they use in the bottom, because clearly what they use in the bottom isn't sufficient enough. So, that's just kind of stuff we're doing.
Changing the subject a little bit, how's Ziegler's Cove? How's that working out?
It's been fine. There's been really no issue. John's been on top of the moorings. You know, I know he wanted to change the ordinance from 3 to 4, I believe it is, which we wouldn't have a problem with. Our concern when I go through there is, 1, we can get through. I mean, we've had boats, a large swing, which we can't have, you know. If you have 3 or 4 boats that are, you know, a 21-foot main go or something like that, that's much different than, you know, a 42-foot sea ray, 3 or 4 of those. And so we have to be able to navigate through safely, make a path. And I've been in there where you can barely get through. You can walk across the boats practically. And then pulling somebody else's, because the moorings are owned by certain people. And they're just used without the owner knowing it. So we don't want somebody pulling somebody's tackle or somebody's mooring out of place by their boat, which is John's point to, I believe, to increase the tackle. Which
Have you
would
seen
be
a
like
difference in usage pattern?
Yes,
Several different-
that, and even before COVID, I mean, COVID was busy, but years ago, I think you might know more about this, it ended up in one of the, there was an article in a popular boating magazine about Ziegler's Cove and a safe haven when traveling the coast and whatnot. And, oh yeah, we get boats from Maine, from Jersey, from, you know, all over the place coming through.
You and Darien?
And they're in too. So we just, we're out there to have fun and enjoy it. As long as they're keeping the peace and there's no issue, we don't want to, we're not there to ruin people's day. We just want everybody to be safe.
One of our members raised the point that she thought people were jumping off the rocks, kids.
That turned into a whole, that's with the purchase of Great Island. So when it was private, we worked very closely with Vinny and the family to get some signage there. And it really helped where kids were on the rocks, people were on the rocks. And they could go, see that sign there? Here's your trespassing ticket if need be. Don't do it again, it's dangerous and all that stuff. It's been a little harder. Well, we own that now, it's public property, it's Darien property, I'm a taxpayer. Okay, but it's not open to you, that's not up to code, so it is closed, is what we've been saying. We had a couple of people the other day that were savvy enough, they were on the wet rocks. Look, don't get hurt. I don't know, you know, you can only do so much. So
Yep.
it's a battle, but we try to be fair and try to educate people. That's all we can really do.
Scott's Cove, any difference?
Scott's Cove's gotten much more crowded because Ziegler's has kind of expanded out into Scott's Cove. People are still afraid of Scott's Cove, to be honest. I don't think people go in there too much.
Afraid of it?
Yeah, well, the rocks. There's more rocks in there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Prop loss.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's more rocks in there than Ziegler's is deep water for
Yeah.
the most part. Scott's Cove has more rocks in there, so it's not as crowded, but there's it's kind of in the middle. They don't go off to the sides. But it's the same as Ziegler's for the most part, and it's really a fish island. Hasn't been an issue. We thought it was gonna be a big issue, and that's where we dealt with the mean high tide line. Basically, the rule was at high tide, we should see nobody walking around. If that makes sense. And at low tide, wet sand is nature. We worked very closely with the family. What are they called?
Halversons.
The Halversons. And she was great. She was great, and she just didn't want any dogs out there because of the birds. So we haven't had an issue, to be honest. And the people that go in there, they typically know it too, because there are some rocks to get in there. They're a little bit more. You're not going to get people from really other than normal Darien going there. So we just try to be out there as much as we can. But we had really no big issues.
One of the things that I think a number of people have expressed concern about in Ziegler's Cove, it relates to people swimming to the rocks, but just swimming generally, which is, if you're driving a boat through there, it's very easy not to see someone down in the water.
Absolutely.
And my understanding is that you don't have like legal authority to stop them from swimming in the water. Is that accurate? Or-
I would believe so. I don't think we would stop somebody from swimming in the water from boat to boat. We've seen it. We advise them to be careful. You know, it's more on the other side. As a boater, you need to be going slow.
Yeah.
You know, whatever you can control and going slow. Even if you put a spotter up front if you had to. If you're going there for 4th of July weekend, it's that crowded.
Right.
You need to do what you need to do.
But it's
on
just
both sides.
It's an issue that as a town we're going to confront over time, because the combination of people in the water, crowded anchorage, and people drinking and driving, which of course happens. That's over time that will go bad somehow.
I would agree. It's going to be a matter of time, and we've had to throw it in reverse several times. Kids on rafts, dogs swimming. That's one of my fears, to be honest.
Yeah.
and we have protocols in place for that. You know, I've met with all the other marine divisions around us, and they've followed me into Ziegler's Cove. They know where Ziegler's Cove is, and that's going to be part of our mutual aid if it, God forbid, ever comes to be. But it's crowded. It can get crowded, yes. Another point is I've seen people on their boats, the cruisers jumping off. You know, they're having fun. The kids are jumping off the second deck, going in. First thing I do is look at the tide. Okay, they're in 10 feet, 8 feet, a little less, and there's a lot of old mushrooms in the ground with the spikes sticking up. So I pull up to them, advise them of that, and they're kind of like, oh my God, I didn't think about that. So there's a lot out there.
I think as a town, on a lot of this stuff, we're going to have to take a step back and not only enumerate the things we want to create rules for, but also be clear about how we want to enforce them, right? Because at one level, you want to enforce good behavior and stay to the rules. At the other level, you don't want to create a police state, right? Especially on Great Island or frankly any of our other parks. I think maybe something you were hinting at was that the compliance culture that we see today is not what it was 20, 30 years ago, right? I happened to be walking out at Selleck's Woods about 2 weeks ago with Chris Philman, Elizabeth Malthus from the Land Trust. Chris is a lovely man if you spend any time with him, a gentle, kind man who works miracles with Selleck's Woods. While we were walking, there was a guy that came up, a young man, with a dog off leash. And Chris, in a polite way, said, I'd appreciate it if you please leash your dog like these signs say. And he didn't do it. Chris repeated himself, and there was a long stream of expletives, right, shouting at this gentle man, and he ran off with his dog, and that was that. And you know, that's the kind of behavior I would have been less inclined to see 20 or 30 years ago. And so one of the things we're going to have to run into across all of our assets, not just Great Island and parks, but frankly our marine assets, is this type of compliance culture. And what are we going to do about that? So I'm almost of the mind to convene folks in other areas that have dealt with this, talk to folks who've maybe dealt with enforcement in an official way, like the police, or unofficially through just, you know, park chaperones and monitors, that sort of thing, and sort of what is best practice around not just setting the rules, which I think is about 5% of the problem, but creating a compliance culture, which is 90% of the problem, and then having a 5% on the end, which is genuine enforcement where we can't negotiate. And so that's one of the reasons we hired Reed Hildebrand for Great Island. I'm hoping some of the learnings from that process, which will not just be them, but a variety of people that we hope to include in this, helps us create that sort of matrix or workflow that I described before, and gives us something that makes sense and allows us to be responsive no matter what we see happening, because we've written this down and we know in this case it's discouragement, or in this case it's education, or in this case it's a ticket, or in this case it's arresting somebody. I'm not prescribing what that is, but we're not clear on it right now. No, we need to be. Agree with that.
I would just add that one thing I think we talked about this in a meeting earlier this year, maybe getting some dive clubs in to try to do some cleanup in there.
That would be amazing.
Remove some of the dangerous items like you see on the bottom. I don't know if that's workable.
One of the other options, if we were to get to a point where we change the mooring standards in Ziegler's Cove, so that many of the existing moorings would have to come out, is to get the Freights guys or the Bloom guys to drag their oyster dredges through there and just
That's an
pick up
idea,
all
too.
that old
Faster.
stuff.
Yeah.
Can we do that without deep approval? Or pull stuff out?
Yeah, I believe we can, but I mean, you have to clear the moorings that we see now. You have to clear out before you go in there with the dredge.
Needs to
But
be empty.
The-
All moorings.
Sorry.
The harbor would need to be empty of all moorings.
Yeah, so the logical time would be if we were changing the mooring standards and kind of just a complete redo. That might be good.
In the off season.
Yeah.
As they do for
Yeah.
Wilson Cove.
Yeah.
I think it'd be a great public relations for us too, that we're giving back to a natural environment too. We've harping on this thing a lot. I first thought about scuba diving group doing it, public relations, and what Darien's doing.
The stuff that's down there, I mean, rings and watches and
It would be,
you get all kinds of stuff.
it would look good for us
Sunglasses.
as a town.
Yeah,
it could be an archaeological
It could be
site.
pretty amazing.
Have anybody ever dove from the police force down there to see what the bottom is? I was always curious.
It's mud.
It is,
Mud.
Yeah, it's just mud. But
unfortunately.
yeah, we've dove down there.
Make it hard. So the dredge might be the best.
Has there been any thought about, speaking of finality,
Thank you.
has there any thought toward moving the police boat, or sometimes at least placing the police boat adjacent to the fire department building?
That was brought up during the purchase. We were approached several times, and we were against it. And then I think it was a flat out no, to be honest. The boat club has been very gracious to us for many years. We see people all day long. We know the kids that are now adults. We know the 12-year-olds that can take the boat out better than their parents. We know what boat's who. We know who's who. So it's a much more community thing rather than being over by itself. And us being removed from that, and the conversations and the education and the talking to them, and then a security point of view. I always say I should have been a fireman. We don't always like seeing the police, and we have a fantastic resource in our vessel, and we wouldn't want anybody to mess with it. Being over there by itself at night. So we keep it at Pear Tree Point. It's also accessible right at the dock there by land with our if we have to respond off duty. We pull right up, which I guess would be way down as well.
Yeah, I would think it would.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, I know it's for the reasons that you've always had that. You
Yeah.
created that culture there.
Yes.
That the extent that we find ourselves with Great Island in a different situation,
Yeah.
based on value.
Yeah.
That there would be some thought, you said you thought about it,
Yeah.
and you said no,
Right.
definitively no.
Right.
But I asked you to consider again, the
Yeah.
context that says, if you've got it working well.
Down the
sometimes-
road, if Great Island became more populated, so to speak.
Yeah, I have if I think
Yeah.
where the puck's gonna be.
Right.
I think the center of effort,
Yeah.
at least at times, will move to and toward that.
Mhm.
That's my forecast.
It might be difficult if Ziegler's is full and there's an emergency on the other side of town, trying to get out of there quickly.
I don't think so. My view is, if it is, it's quicker access even to, if you can't navigate,
Mm-hmm.
then you'll solve that problem. And the access time between the boat club to the sound, unless you're going points west.
Right.
I just asked you to keep an open mind to that.
Yeah, it was just for us, it's a community value that we have at the Darien Boat Club by far. We've seen generations come through, and I think we've really made a difference. We don't see bow riding, to be honest. We feel every time we see a skier, they're wearing a vest, they have a spotter. Of course, the 5 mile an hour in the harbor is always an issue depending on how the boat's riding. But I do feel we made a difference over the years, and as long as we can talk to people, that's kind of what we do, and we enjoy that, honestly. But yeah, in the future, who knows what could happen,
And kind of in that same theme, I've just watched a general degradation in maybe the courtesy of boaters in terms of speed through this harbor.
But that goes back to anybody who doesn't have their license. You can sit online this winter for, I think it's a 6-hour course at this point. It's been reduced to 6-hour online course. Press the buttons, look at the answers online, and you get your license, and you're on the water in the spring. There's no hands-on. We deal with it a lot, and we pull people over because we're getting cut off rights away. Last week, no cruise lights at night, no navigational lights at night. So it's just a constant. We had 2 boats on the 2 boats. One turtle this past week, and one was up on shore, a pear tree. I don't know if you saw that. People you need to check your stuff. The bilge pump, the bridles, and everything. Maintenance.
This past week in Darien Harbor,
Mm-hmm.
one sailboat was on their vessel, standing, and was knocked over in the channel, adjacent to the
Really?
channel. Knocked over, hurt himself just short of transport because of ski boat wake.
Really, in the channel?
In the channel, on the channel line.
Mm.
So it's a sailboat of 35-foot sailboat. So when I hear that, and that comes back to our commission, director, it's not hearsay.
Right.
It is more than, courtesy.
Absolutely.
And I just wonder, that the request last year, at the early of the season, was for some presence to be in the mooring field or on the, frankly, it's not at the police, it's not where the police boat is located, at least by then. The
Right.
lake is, there is no.
Right, it's
Everything
further out,
else do-
the mouth.
Yeah, it's either the mouth
Yeah.
or halfway through, or at the yacht club. But ask for your presence to just literally, in the same way you'd like to be present,
Mhm.
and your presence at the fountain. But by placing your vessel either at the yacht club dock or in the mooring field,
It slows people down.
it does. So I guess. as
We
a
can absolutely do
board-
that, and we do that, and we can actually do that more. Same complaint on the road, you know, all the speeders, when you're driving a black and white car or a blue boat, no one does it in front of you.
Yeah.
That's the problem. But we're happy to sit out there, you know, and if something like that happens, if we can get a registration or, you know, identify the person, we'll absolutely have a conversation with them.
Okay, good. And we'll, to the extent that as several of us are members of the yacht club,
Mhm.
and you're looking for an easy tie-up point to not only show community goodwill on that side of the river, but the other side, I'm confident that that presence will deter bad behavior.
Definitely.
If you need the informal invite to.
I know Scott very well.
And Scott will invite you.
Maybe we can hand out a couple chits to the snack bar.
Stuff happens. Legitimately, of course.
There you go. So,
But I would have personally. I
absolutely,
would have
absolutely, not a problem, not a problem.
What do you see that we could help you with, other than dredging, is number one?
The dredging. I think we're in really good shape. You know, we're very supported by the town, by town administrators, our administrators at the PD. A little frustrating at times. We're very much. It's hard. We're kind of. I don't know. During the summer, we're down there, and we're coming off the boat back to the road September 1. You know, September is a great boating month, September, October. So it's hard. They need us back in the schedule for manpower and whatnot. Same thing beginning of the season. Our first day was Memorial Day, basically, that weekend. Whereas in the past, you have an 80-degree day or 75-degree day in April, the water's still 45 degrees. So extending the season if needed. And I do think we're getting an email. I think the yacht club is hosting a regatta in September.
Yep, hello, Scott.
And I have Scott's gonna write an email. Without that email, we wouldn't be out there. So Scott and the club needs to write an email requesting us to be out there. Other than that, our budget, our equipment is where it needs to be. And things are
Four
good.
engines on your boat to compete with the fire.
No, we're gonna need new engines soon. We have Evinrude's. That went through the bait shop. That went through the bait shop, so.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, that's a whole other
Yeah,
story. I'll be back in a few months for that. But no, the boat's great, no issues. So we went through the technology fund last year and got all new electronics, which was huge. So we're very well supported, and we really do appreciate that. No issues.
We know you had a long day, so if anybody else has anything.
Any questions? Anything that's needed? We can be reached through I'm down at the boat club most of the day, at headquarters, wherever you guys need. So and come see us at the dock.
Yeah, no, come see it on that.
Anytime.
Thank you for stopping by.
All set?
Appreciate
Yeah,
it.
All right.
Thank you.
Good seeing you guys.
Appreciate it.
Take care.
See you, folks.
Great.
Have a good night.
Well, our harbor master is not available tonight due to illness. So, John, I don't know if you have anything you want to.
No, I know, excuse me, that John received a letter from the state that cast some uncertainty on the harbor regulation review process and whether, not whether that had been done correctly, but whether there was something else that needed to be done in terms of review, approval, or just syndication for that really could be voted on and put into place. But I actually had a briefing from whatever attorneys have actually said that. John and I talked about it briefly. I thought he might be here, and obviously he's not. So I told Bill that I was going to be here in any case. And so if you got something that we could engage on that while I'm here, otherwise I'm pretty tired and I'm going to really
I'll just say quickly, so that we set the changes to the ordinances were sent off to town attorneys. They sent back revised draft, which I forwarded to everybody. So we're in sort of a holding pattern with the map that we talked about before with Officer Ehre, because we need a finalized map to attach for town waters definition. And then John's process with back and forth deep and
I'm sorry, were
potentially,
the revisions from town council before or after receipt of that letter?
they were
That's what I
sort of
wanted.
before, I'm not sure they're gonna be impacted by that letter. That letter is more going to,
Around the harbor management plan and all that.
yeah, it's more
And if we're getting some
process.
special,
But I do think I've been talking to John Keena, recently, about a number of things that kind of impact this. And I don't want to like steal his thunder on it, but I do think that it will probably make sense at some point for us and him to come to you and suggest that we hire a maritime lawyer to assist us in some of these reviews, because they're not, the issues that we're kind of running into are maritime issues. They're not plain vanilla legal issues.
Yeah.
Can you give an example of this in context?
Something as simple as where's the town line of town for waters between Norwalk and Darien, which is
United States Coast Guard, DEEP, and DOT have 3 different maps for town waters.
Is it limited to the geography associated with the town lines? Was it bigger?
No, there's also, I don't want to get into it because John really is the one who has the expertise in this, but there's process, which body should be approving which part of the ordinances.
and the
All proposed
and the
ordinances.
interplay
Yes,
between
yes.
the town's rights and DEEP's rights to set rules.
Yes.
So this is jurisdiction issues? Am I understanding that?
Well,
I can't get the flavor without it, but I'm trying to understand what
well,
the issue is.
we're not trying to get into the flavor of it right
Yes.
now.
Yeah.
So, but at some point, when John is ready, we'll come back to you, but I do think, just as a heads up, that having a maritime lawyer who can specifically help us with some of these things will be helpful.
so I'm very supportive of that. If you guys have somebody in mind, or if Wayne and company can recommend somebody, I would get started on identifying that person right now. That's got my support.
I think John has someone he'd like to suggest, so he'll.
This is John
Keena.
Keena, okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think we need a little bit of expertise, I agree with Cliff. And when John's back, he'll go into the details of it. Bill and I had spoken to him about it. He'd shared the letter from DEEP with us, and he shared it with John Degreski, and we said, you really need to bring this in front of the full commission, we'll have a discussion about it. So that's where we're at today, but he had.
In the meantime, go find that lawyer, or go get John.
Yeah.
I think he's got somebody he thinks would be good.
Great. Is it possible for him also to start to weigh in and educate us on the issues in the absence of the meeting?
Oh, sure, I'm
Email.
sure we could ask him to do that.
Yeah.
He's in the absence of COVID would
Yeah, he's
be the best way for
under the
him to
weather,
do
too.
this.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
the fountain of knowledge and all that stuff.
Yep.
Is there anything else that I could help with, or anything that's relevant to the or my board that we could discuss?
We're good, so we will.
Had a long day.
Thanks for
Release
showing
you
up.
as well. Thank you for
First episode,
coming.
ask the first selectman tomorrow. We don't want the first question is, why is the first selectman asleep?
Yes.
Don't know, he's not answering. Anyway, I appreciate all the work that you guys do. I've got all these meetings now on my calendar, and I will try to come to all your meetings. Not just because I think this topic is really important, especially if you guys explore some of the rule following problems that we just discussed. I think that actually could play into some of the other work that we do. And I'd also like to make sure that this group is hooked up with Reed Hillebrand as they start to think about that. Because having those consistent, we're going to get a consistent strategy, whether you're on land or sea for all that stuff. And there's a lot of that that's still not clear in my mind in terms of how to address that. So more to come. All right, thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
So as chairman's report, sort of we're going to talk about the ordinances in brief, which we already did. I don't really have much of anything.
It's because it's a short meeting.
It's a short meeting, so that just.
I can give, not the Harbor Master's update, but an update of some recent activities that included the Harbor Master.
Okay.
So John and Scott Van Dusen, who's the general manager of the Royal Yacht Club, and I went out last Saturday morning to look at around the harbor and see if we could identify new spots to put moorings in, to increase the number of moorings that we have. Because you've probably heard me before pound the table saying, there's more spaces. And I think that was a very productive trip, and there are definitely more spots we can put moorings in, that, especially if you're talking about a mid-20-something foot center console, we can. I got John to agree to at least 6, but I personally would put more like 15 as the number of places where we can fit moorings in. So I think that'll probably, just given where we are in the season right now, that'll be a next winter type thing, give boats moorings. There are, I know Kevin, you had asked a question about kind of a two-pronged question about more winter sticks, which is, can you mark them so they're harder to run over? And to that effect, and to that end, the yacht club has gone out and purchased a bunch of little orange buoys, and they're going to be tied to the winter sticks, so you'll see the orange buoy more dramatically than the kind of the barnacle-covered winter stick. And then
There are some in the bay as well that
Yeah,
are,
so
that are
we'll-
under at high
they're
tide or
about
under.
to submerge.
Yeah.
So, and then, we did actually kind of go around and talk about most of the winter sticks. I think there's 9 in the harbor right now. Most of those are what I would describe as subject to an active dispute right now. So John's in discussions with the person who owns it. He is asking the road not to provision it with the full mooring until that discussion plays through. So, and then there are a couple of, people who just have kind of gone off and haven't gotten around to doing anything, and may be in the process of giving it up, but he's still trying to figure out what the status is. So it's not like there's a whole fleet of winter sticks that are out there that actually are available to be given out. They're kind of in process. But I do think many of them will, in the course of the next season, open up for new people to have.
I would think, because we talked about this last year, kind of, I don't have a specific dates, but around this time last year, the winter sticks. And that's where we came up with the idea of better visibility, as opposed to a safety navigation hazard. And the feedback from John then was, again, they were in some form of either dispute, or the person had secured a dock space and I wanted to kind of give them a chance. But I would think after 2 cycles.
No, I think you're not right, because it's going to be something that's actually perpetual, because there's so much turnover, there's so much new. These are new winter sticks as it was.
But I don't think they are new. I'd like to get the fact, are they new or are they not?
Well, you can dig into the facts, but I personally believe that there will always be some winter sticks out there, because there's always some people who, for whatever circumstances, have changed.
Then I think the details should be available to us and to the town, and the people on the waiting list, of if in fact there are moorings that are in some form of state, a specific mooring, that prevents them from getting off the waiting list and onto a mooring, that we should be able to track those. Because my sense is that 2 seasons for the same sticks. Now, if I personally, memorialize that this mooring at this location is 2 years of inactivity, no, but I'm getting close to it, because I think it is.
But some of these, you have to also understand that some of these discussions have taken a long time. And when we talk about jurisdictional issues with deep, and and why we're making changes to the ordinances, why we're trying to make changes to the ordinances, some of that is to give John or any harbor master clear authority to do things where he doesn't have clear authority. And some of those winter sticks fall into the gray area where John's trying to do something and other people are pushing back. So, I mean, I'm not gonna go winter stick by winter stick, and I frankly don't believe that that's our commission's purview. But I do think that, at least from my point of view, the winter stick issue is not a big issue. It's under control, and there's gonna be winter sticks, and the fact that there's winter sticks out there is not some sign of a defect in the process.
I'm agreeing with the total number of 9. As long as those nine are moving, there'll always be a perpetual state of change. 9 into itself is more than I thought. It was 2x what I thought. But the ability for us to, if our charter for the commission was to create regulations that assisted in making more moorings available quicker, reducing the waiting list, which is one of the state objectives of John. And I just want to make sure we're making progress against that.
Yeah, but it's ultimately his authority to assign moorings, so, there's a limit to how we overlay onto his actual mooring by mooring decision-making.
I'm not arguing that at all. I'm not trying to change the
Sounds like
scope
you
of
are.
the commission. No, but I'm not. But the responsibility of the harbor master is to attack the mooring list and the waiting list. And if we're not seeing my advancement on that, then I think that's we should
We're
be taking
seeing,
that.
I don't know what you're looking at, and what I see out on the ground is tremendous advancement.
Well, if the mooring sticks aren't changing, I guess I don't agree with
You're making an assertion which I don't believe is factually correct.
Okay, I think it is, because after 2 years of observing it, I think it is correct. But to the extent that we find 15 more moorings available, that's a good movement. If we find 6 that he agrees to, that's a good movement. And to the extent we see the safety issue associated with the winter sticks removed, those are all good movements. But I've listened to the arguments. I just want to see the advancement of the traction on the
Well,
water.
why don't you go out on the water and get involved with it? You're welcome to do that, so we're not debating facts here at the
Well, frankly, I'm
commission.
on the water, so I'm able to do that. I don't need additional charge to do that. So I'm observing the moorings are not changing. So I guess I have a different view.
All right, why don't we move on into the subject?
I would say that if John was here, he would
He'll-
speak to it very
he'll jump
clearly.
in.
I've spoken to him a couple times from the boat club side, and then just, I work with his wife Sarah, always looking for houses, so I'm always in touch with John. But every time I talk to him, it's like a list of issues longer than his arm, where this person just is a pain, or they can't figure out what they want to do, or they got a slip at the boat club, or they got a new boat. So if the amount of winter sticks remains about the same, but it shifts, one person took one out, but then another person left theirs in, it seems like that's a bit of the issue. But to your point, like if it stays about that number, that's not great, but it's not terrible. But if it's revolving through and after 2 cycles, I think John's pretty hot on furloughing. If you're doing more than 2 years of furlough, you gotta go to the bottom of the list, and that happened to me. So.
Yeah. We just want to see, our charter is to help manage the asset.
Sure.
We have instruments to do that, including the harbor master, influence of all the regulations. That was the intention of all this regulatory change,
Right.
is to attack the waiting list.
And it does seem like, to your point, Flip, too, that these ordinances are really trying to help John assert a level of power that he doesn't quite have at the moment. That's what
Yeah,
I-
and that is where you get into this whole discussion relative to deep and what is the role of the harbor master. And so that's where, at least in my mind, we need the help of a maritime attorney,
Yeah,
because
makes a lot of sense.
it all gets into the kind of this funky stuff.
It seems we went backwards with some recent ruling. Some kind of something from deep came from.
Yeah, well, I think just hearing John talk about some of the communications, and John Zagrodzky kind of referenced it, I think also. Some of the communications have been, let's just say, confusing with them.
Was it the last meeting that we talked about the harbor management plan and that we're grandfathered in with a special permit? Or was that this meeting, or was that an old boat club meeting? I think it was the last meeting we had for this, back in May.
Yes.
Or, yeah,
Yeah,
typically
we don't have a harbor management plan, we were given a special act.
Right,
Um,
in like the 50s or something. Or
Yeah.
Right, so that supersedes
But-
the harbor management.
But the special act, you've read this special act, have you?
Yes, I have.
is not exactly a clear and comprehensive roadmap.
No, it's very short and, yeah. It's,
So it
but-
may or may not be helpful to our issues, but that's one of the things we need a maritime law.
Yeah, and it seems like deep isn't really clear either on where the permissions and rights lie, which is why John was gonna come in and talk about it today, which is, you know,
I know we're, in the absence of the full picture,
yeah. I mean, I'm not comfortable going into a lot of detail on it because he was supposed to do it and we didn't
Right.
prepare ourselves for that on TV. And I don't wanna misspeak, but
maybe you do know where our draft ordinances and draft, is this presented to you? Is this shared with you?
no, we're not at that stage yet.
Okay.
So Patty turned the comments that we agreed upon at the May, Patty's the lawyer for the town. And share the comments that we made at the last meeting we had in May and back to us with the open town waters map point. So we were as far as we could go on that, and then in the interim, this letter came from Deep to John. And so that needs to be sorted out before anything can move forward. So that and the map are kind of putting us in a holding. I mean, honestly, the process is gonna take months to get to approval. It's not, so we're not missing out on this season, we're already missing this
Agree.
season. So let's hope that we get everything sorted and have everything in place for 2025.
Which is always, I think several of us view that would be the best case anyways.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, I'm hopeful.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, so that's where we land on that. So John, I'm sure when he comes up from feeling better, will reach out. But, do you want to update us on any shellfishing or are there closures, Martin, anything?
Seems like every other day they're all closed, but,
Any
we were,
heavy rain event.
yeah, right, and we were gonna go out last week, did you end up going? No, the tides were wrong.
I
We were gonna
screwed
go
up, I
out to-
apologize.
No, it's all good. I had a crazy weekend anyway, so I wasn't able to join. But I guess in the near future, we'll try and get out to, where's the fish island? Or where's the sign?
Great Island.
Great
The
Island.
sign is on Great
It's on
Island.
Okay, and repair the sign, figure out how best to
Get the sign
anchor it.
Do we know that are they stocking the clams? Do we know
I
what
don't know anything about it.
That's a good question.
Maybe
I'll look
you
into
could
that.
follow up
Absolutely.
for the next meeting, see how
Sure.
that's,
Will do.
get a report from Freight.
Will do.
Thank you. So I do think we have a quorum, so why don't we take a look at the minutes and from the May meeting. Yeah. And get those approved.
We have a quorum, but I wasn't here for the last meeting, so how does that work?
But you've looked at the, you've watched it online,
watched the whole channel,
I
right?
haven't watched it online.
Oh, that's.
I have not watched, I have not had the opportunity to watch it.
I guess we should table this for the next go round.
Sorry.
So everyone can hand back the
You
minutes.
have
I'll
that
bring
on
them
speed dial, huh?
to the-
Channel 79 every night. Okay. All right, so we'll have to hold that.
Yeah, we could table this and do it next time. So
It's
I
okay.
don't think we have any new business unless anyone else wants to raise any other issues tonight.
I have one other thing, just to kind of put it out there for people to start to think about. One of the other things that John and Scott and I kind of looked at is where the opening buoys are to the channel into the harbor, the red nun and the green can out at the entrance to the harbor. They are super widely set relative to the kind of the channel that most people come in at. They're way off to the sides and they're kind of skewed and not square to the channel. And one of the things, as we were thinking about more mooring spaces, if you moved those navigational aids kind of closer to the middle and squared them up, it would create like a whole nother row of what I'll call bigger boat moorings. And it actually makes the mooring field look more appropriate, that navigational aids are not in the middle of the moorings. So if you were to want to move those, that's a whole US Coast Guard process. But next time you guys are in the harbor, take a look at what it would look like if you moved them closer together and squared them up to the actual angle of the channel, because there would be visually a lot more room for moorings out
Is there
there.
any reason for having it wide there?
No, I can't think of any,
Just
other
it's
than
been
that's
that
where it's
way
always
year after
been.
year, they just keep
Are you
popping.
referring to the Coast Guard points?
Yeah.
I would think that they would be extraordinarily reluctant to move navigational aids, and I'm just thinking about my own navigating, to the extent that you want to call it that. I mean, I don't know that I've updated the software on my GPS on my
Yeah,
boat
but-
in 20 years.
But
and
think
I
about this.
would imagine that most people don't either.
The alternative is that the navigational aids are actually buried in the mooring field.
If you put moorings there.
No, there are moorings near the
Inside.
Red Nun. So, you know, if you go to that mooring to the Red Nun, go to the Nun in your GPS and followed it, you would have hit Froya when Froya was there. So there's good actual reasons not to be in the middle of the mooring field with navigational aids.
So it sounds like something we should attempt to get it straightened out.
So I just raised this for you guys to start thinking about when you're out there, just kind of look at it. And it's gonna be a lengthy bureaucratic process if we decide to do it. You know well how these things work.
Yeah,
But-
it could be lengthy and it could be pretty straightforward though. I'll dig into that a little bit on what that might entail, because I'm in pretty close contact with Coast Guard Sector Long Island Sound
Because
fairly often.
there's no good reason for where, other than that's where they always were.
Right.
There's no good reason for where they are now.
Well, the green buoy marks the reef on the right side.
It's a harbor entrance.
No, it's the harbor entrance. It's not really, there is a rock buoy that's kind of right, a separate buoy that's near a rock. And I'm talking about moving the green buoy further away from the rock, you know, that green buoy would move to the east towards the middle of the channel.
What do you think the
Are
width
you
has to
talking the
be?
flash or the buoy?
There's a green kind of nun, right, that, I don't know.
One is a flasher and one is
Yeah, the green can is the flasher.
Okay.
and then there is a green, then there is a can that is further north.
Further north, that can
It's
is
inside.
literally in the middle of the mooring field right now.
Yeah.
That can doesn't have anything to do with the channel.
Is it possible that it's drifted off?
You
Or
can
is it- has it
migrate it.
always
I
been
don't-
there?
Like,
I don't know. It,
Might be worth
But-
like a maintenance call. If
But
it is drifted off.
that one, I think they've all been plus, my recollection is that they've all been plus or minus where they are for a long time. But
Especially
no one
on the
ever
chart, right?
raised the question.
Yeah.
See where it is on the chart versus where it is in actuality, maybe?
I'll go, next time I'm out on my boat, I'll check them versus the chart location. But I think they're relatively close.
Yeah.
I suspect there was navigable water, which means there was mooring space available. Therefore, a mooring was placed there, i.e. Froya, and those cans, the moorings on the west side of the harbor, inside that green nun, or that green can. It just evolved over time, I think.
Yeah, and keep in mind, the outer moorings on the west side of the harbor are the moorings that overlap with the Bloom shellfish leases. And so if we run into trouble where we have to move those moorings, where we're gonna wanna move them is to the east side of the channel, which is where it would really be helpful to move the Red Nun from. So just something to think about when you're out
Well,
there.
if Martin has contacts already, he can start
Yeah, I'll
initiating that.
I'll see.
I guess one of my questions would be, is what is the width that you have to work with? And then we have to kind of plot where that should be. Right?
Yeah, there's, if you actually go out and look at it, you'll see that it's like a half mile
It is
between,
very
Yeah.
wide. I agree.
between the red and the green. And it's, in terms of where, if you then sit and watch 95% of the boat traffic, that's all within like 100-foot channel.
I agree.
And to keep that a little deeper at low tide, you know, to
Yeah.
keep that backwash.
So a related question, have the channel markers been placed differently this season than they were in past? It feels like they're a little bit closer maybe to the yacht club.
You're
than they
referring to
were-
the non-Coast Guard
Yes,
townline
yeah,
club.
yes,
Are you referring to that?
yes, I am,
The mid-channel markers.
yeah.
I think those are, I would be doubtful if, I think
Okay.
Scott maintains those?
Who put, I don't even,
I believe Scott,
I honestly don't know who put them in, maybe Scott does.
I think he does, and if he puts them with the GPS, I'd be surprised.
All right, just felt to me like going out that they felt a little different this year.
It really, their position really changes depending on the tide level, the height of the tide and the current. And where the wind is blowing the boats. You know, when there's a westerly wind, all the boats swing from the west. It changes a lot.
So that scope moves along too with the tide.
Yeah.
I think the permanence was intended to be the lit green marker, to simplify that, and the range marker in the road was meant to be the entrance to the harbor, has been the case for 20 years. And everything else has been, those day markers are just that, reflected day markers are maintained by the, I think are placed by the yacht, Norton Yacht Club, kind of at will. And I think they're usually used more as a separation of inbound and outbound traffic,
Mhm.
as opposed to any real navigation. If they're close to the deep water spot, I think it's coincidental.
I mean, it's another thing, if you just kind of are thinking about the harbor from a clean slate point of view, having the mid-channel markers is not necessarily our best strategy, because they get run over all the time at night, because people don't see them. It would be better to have, you know, like most harbors have as the channel, red and green as you go into the channel.
Yeah, our channel signifies the mouth of the harbor, as opposed to the channel per se.
Yeah, then we have one green can buried in the mooring field.
In the mooring
that-
Room for improvement.
These 6 moorings that you found, whereabouts did they appear to be? And then
They're kind of, what I'll say, all over the place, but there's a whole row along the eastern edge of the harbor, like near where the Barker's house is, and so there's a whole row. There's a ton of mooring space out by that red nun in that area. Now again, these are better for slightly bigger boats. People are going to complain that their launch ride is too long and stuff like that, but I think, you know, give them an option to have a mooring. And then there's a bunch of them over on the eastern edge of, near where that green can is, not the lit can, but the unlit can. And then going around to the southern part of, what is that, Nash Island, Butler's Island? Nash Island, right, Pratt Island, Nash Island,
Yeah.
whatever it is. So there's a bunch, and you know, I think historically we've not put boats there because you can see rocks. And but you know, where the rocks are, where the rocks are not, it's like nice sandy bottom.
some of the deepest parts of our harbor is south of Nash Island by the rocks.
Yes, so there's a couple good mooring locations in there.
And there's been growing moorings. There's been another 25, 30 foot powerboat placed south, almost due south from Pratt.
Yeah, that's not in, it will have a permanent mooring close to there. That's a guy who lives right there. And so he will have one of those
Littoral.
littoral moorings.
And even further,
But-
further south still.
But that boat that's there, the big, like 35-foot motorboat,
Yeah, maybe.
that's on one of the club guest moorings right now on a temporary basis. But his permanent mooring, which has been ordered, is gonna go near there, but not there.
Folks, we have to end the meeting because that's all the notes I want to take.
Okay.
Can we have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Meeting adjourned at 8:27.